Hello and welcome back. I am here with Preston Jacobs, and we are talking about episode 6 of the Wheel of Time season 2, Eyes Without Pity. And how are you feeling about this one?
So I liked this episode the most. I think it's my favorite one so far. It's my favorite episode so far. And I was trying to think why I thought that, and I think it's just because at this point we know the characters pretty well. We've got, it took a long time to introduce a lot of these characters.
Yeah.
And so I thought the Egwene story of her torture and everything was pretty compelling, and that was a pretty interesting story by itself. I mean, it seemed that was like the main story of the episode. Everything else kind of feels like B plots to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. I thought it was a very interesting, compelling thing, especially like the very simple thing of like how do you not perceive a picture as a weapon when you hate the
Right.
person you're. It's very reminiscent of a Star Trek: The Next Generation episode where Picard gets captured and tortured, and he's asked how many lights are in front of him, and there's 4 lights, but the guy keeps saying no, there's 5, and Picard at the end keeps refusing. He's like, there's 4 lights, there's 4 lights. But then you find out actually secretly he saw 5, but he lied and said he was 4, that he had actually broken. But it was this very similar, like the thing about the picture, like not seeing it as a weapon. It was very interesting, I guess I like the idea of if you're going to establish this world where female channelers can bond and collectively use their magic, what happens if one group wants to enslave another and
Right.
use them in that respect? And so I think that was a neat playing with the rules, kind of idea,
Yeah.
exploration of the rules of the universe, and interesting nonetheless. Yeah. So I liked it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked what you're saying about the water. The one thing that stood out to me is so often in the show, they're using a water for a metaphor of the one power of how to channel. So you've got
Mm.
the men, they're kind of like wrestling with it, and the women are surrendering to it, like Egwene floating in a stream in season 1. So like her pouring her water into another woman's cup is like giving her, like, I'm handing over my power to you.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah.
It's
But
yes. It's much more of the yes. There's more of the I'm your bitch kind of like attitude,
yeah,
even more than a simple pour. Like, because I think for anyone else, like, yeah, pouring somebody water is no big deal. But there's
right.
something. But in this context, it's so very servile.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
This woman that plays the captor, I thought, I mean, the woman that plays Egwene, I think did great, but also I was like, I can't discount the woman that was playing her captor as well, because it's just
Yes.
immediately like just that, ugh, like
Yeah. No, but you know what I really appreciate about her performance is a lot of times an actor will act insincere and you immediately are like, "Oh, they're a villain," because
right.
their insincerity is so over the top, you know?
Hmm.
And I like how her insincerity was a bit more subtle, like
Yeah.
Egwene saw through it immediately, but it wasn't so over. Like there, even that first moment of like, oh, what's your name? Like, oh, is she actually being really is she being real? But no, she wasn't. But I appreciate that it wasn't so over the top.
Yeah, and she even,
Um,
I think, gives her like a little head pat at one point, like a
yeah.
little caress. Like I'm like, oh,
Right. So yeah, that was the bulk. It felt like that was the bulk of the episode, and I do appreciate like the acting from the Egwene actress and the suffering and I you definitely feel your pain, and you're definitely sitting there going, what would I do if I were in her situation? How do you get out of this? Like, what's the solution? Is there some clever way to
Right.
somehow break out of the cell? You get into that prison heist mode of like, how
Yeah.
do I get out of here? And there just doesn't seem to be any solution, or at least I
Yeah.
can't see one.
Yeah, and every solution that she tries to think of, I mean, she's got nothing. She's got nothing to work with here. Every time she goes for another object, she's just met with like immense pain or whatever. She's like almost afraid to
Right.
touch anything towards the end. But
Yeah.
that ending, how it's paired too, with all of the certain things going on, it's just like, ugh, gut punch one after another.
Yeah, that was a bit. I will say it was weird, the splicing of those stories, because you have the girls upstairs, you have the
Yeah.
battle in the street, and then you have Egwene at the same time. But Egwene didn't need to be in that intercut, so you're like, what thematic, like, so it must be intercut in a thematic sense. Like the events don't really relate to each other. It's not like, had they been killed in the street like a day earlier, it would have been any different. But there was they pair it because of the thematic connections, right? Of like, this is your darkest moment, and
Right.
uh, you know you fight, you sacrifice, and you don't get anything. You just
Right.
you you know yeah, though I was a little confused on what the couple were planning to do and what they were doing with their little communing.
Are you talking
Um,
about the Aes Sedai and her warder that goes out on the street to fight?
I understood that. I understood that they had,
Okay.
like, once they were discovered, they had to go sacrifice themselves because the villains will be looking for a channeler. Like, I got that.
Yeah.
But what were they actually like when they were upstairs doing their communal
Ah.
channel, and Nynaeve fucked up and like
Mhm.
overpowered and signaled to everyone. Um, what were they trying to just like locate Egwene or something?
No, they had one of the collars that Egwene is wearing, and they're trying to
Yes.
figure out how it works and if there's any way to open it to
Hmm.
get it off of
Gotcha.
someone. So,
And then in the end, they just popped the collar on the Aes Sedai at the end. Yeah.
right.
Okay. So Nynaeve should feel really guilty because, man, she kind of sucks in this whole episode.
She really, I mean, oh, that's gonna be I don't know. On one hand, I hope that they explore that, but on the other hand, I'm like, do they have time to explore her being like, "Oh no, I screwed up."
Yeah, I mean, and she really screwed up because, like, first of all, they were like, "Yeah, you need to leave town," and she's like, "I'm not leaving," and they're like, "Okay, so you're going to endanger us all? Okay, great, fine, you're not leaving. Let's figure some stuff out." And then Nynaeve is like, blows the whole thing, blows the cover, and gets the warder, her husband, killed, and the other woman captured. And it's like, ugh, nice going, Nynaeve. You're the worst. Like, you're the freaking worst.
Oh, I
Oh
I think it's
God.
I think it's funny though too that like these two women, Nynaeve and Elaine, like they
Mm,
both, despite where they're at now, they come from like a higher position than pretty much everyone else. Well, maybe not Egwene, but Nynaeve is the wisdom. So like where she's from, she's afforded this authoritarian like status, I
mm,
guess. Like she has people under her. She's kind of like in charge of things. And then we have this other woman who is like a real deal, like royal princess. So like this
mm,
pairing and kind of butting heads of these two women is something that makes sense to me, but also it's not fun to watch. But also, I know where the story is going. So, on the other hand,
mm.
I'm like, oh, yeah, I know. Okay, this will
Yeah,
be over
yeah.
at some point.
One of the other things I liked more about this episode is finally you have a lot of the disparate plot threads, and then all of a sudden they kind of interact. actually, for
Convergence.
once
Yeah.
in an episode where like Rand actually like talks to Egwene and Matt actually meets Rand, and I guess at the end Lan meets Rand, and like I mean I guess at the beginning Rand is with Moiraine, so a lot of the plots are actually touching, and so you kind of feel, rather than having a whole bunch of disparate stories where you're kind of like, who is that character and why should I care, they actually are kind of one story for a moment.
Yeah.
So that kind of felt, and it felt nice to have Matt do something for a second,
I knew
even
you
if
were
it's a
going to
little
say that.
even if it's a little confusing. It's a little
Yeah.
like, because you're like, okay, your master plan was to bring Matt to this town so he could not go on a mission with Brand. Like you could have just not brought him to the town.
Yeah. Yeah. I I don't know. The Min and Matt plot is so wildly different from the books. It's hard for me to make
Yeah.
sense of it in some aspects. But if they didn't put Min there, I don't know what they would have done with her. I mean, they could have just
Right.
left her out this season.
Get the idea that like, okay, Min might be lying and saying that Matt is going to kill Rand because the evil forces want to make Rand fail, so they want to keep him from and Matt from working together. But if that's the case, like why bring Matt to the town in the first place? Like just don't bring him to the town.
There's
So
also the question of like, what is the validity of Min's vision? Matt
right.
seems to truly believe it, but
Right. He claims he doesn't believe it, and then he believes it, and he doesn't do anything. He doesn't go with Rand. But why should Matt believe it?
yeah, that's a good question because we haven't really explored like if something would have happened, I think, while he and Min were on the road.
Right. Like she sees something, she predicts it, and then he realizes that she has powers, and then is like, oh crap, this woman can predict the future. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah, something
if
like
only they
that.
had 5 episodes to establish something like that. If only there was no time. There was only 5 episodes. But I don't know. Maybe something will come up. We have what, 2 more episodes or it's 8 episode
2.
season.
Yep,
Yeah,
2
we
left.
got like 2 more episodes to save that. I don't know. Moiraine. The thing I don't understand about Moiraine is why she didn't eat those sandwiches. Those sandwiches. He made those sandwiches for her. They're just gonna go to waste. Like eat the sandwiches.
Oh,
Do Aes Sedai eat?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the sandwiches. Did you watch The Bear? Have you watched The
Uh
Bear?
no.
Okay, it's on Hulu. It's really good. It's about some restaurant people. But yeah, all I could think of is when he's like bringing these sandwiches in. I'm like, oh, look at the little chef. Look at him. He's so proud of his
Right.
sandwiches.
But he was just kind of pretending. I don't know, or he's half pretending, right? Because his
What?
sister comes in and is like,
Yeah,
well, he does worship you, but he was really in there for a different reason. I don't
yeah.
know.
Him and his mother were working together on something, plotting, trying to.
Spying. I thought he was gonna like appear at the letters that she was writing and then like report back or something.
Oh, that's a good. Yeah. I mean, that's
But
that's very possible. That is very possible. So here's the thing with this season. The first episode starts out with that like round table meeting of all of the dark friends, and you've kind of
mm,
gotten to see like, okay, there's one over here that's a white cloak. Here's one over here, and he's wearing like soldier gear from like a culture that we've
mm,
seen before. So like there really is this idea that anyone could be working with the Forsaken, and that's like the same as the beginning of book 2. So like that's the
mm.
point that I think they're really trying to drive home in the books. It's like every class, every nation, every society, there will be infiltration somewhere. Aes
Have
Sedai.
you have you gone back to that opening scene to see now that we're well into the season, are there people at that table that we've now been like introduced to through this season?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
any rulers or whoever?
The Shanshan High Lady Suroth, the woman with the long fingernails.
Yes.
We've
She was at the table. Okay.
we've seen an Aes Sedai ring, so I'm assuming that's Leandrin.
I
We
see.
we had the mother and child, the Tuathon. They were the ones missing, I guess, from the first episode where they find like all the Tuathon people slaughtered.
Oh, I see.
There's the
Leandrin, by the
soldier.
way,
Oh yeah.
Leandrin, by the way, took the death of her son pretty well, all
Yeah,
things
she did.
considered.
Yeah, she
It's weird
did.
considering she was like so violent and emotional and like over the top emotional about her old son who lived a full life and was dying natural causes and or not dying of natural causes, and then somebody comes in and like kills him, and she like takes it pretty well. I was like, but she was like screaming at people, like over the top screaming at people, out of control emotion in the previous episodes, and then she gets then the guy dies, and she just she gives one of those strong, like in movies
The
there's the
strong
strong
tear.
tear, the
Yeah.
strong, because in real life when people cry they like grimace and we look incredibly ugly, our whole
Snot.
faces
Yeah.
contort. And then in movies it's like you get like one stray tear, like strong stone face.
Hmm.
She gave one of those.
Yeah. I have to wonder if what her allegiance to Ishamael is going to be like now. Is she deciding to kind of partner up with Lanfear, or is she just going to eventually be like, you know what, like maybe all of this isn't for me and try and distance herself, even though she can't really?
Yeah. Now, Lanfear comes off. Lanfear, I don't know if she's just a big liar, but she comes off more gray. Like she's not necessarily. Maybe she's just kind of against Ishmael, but I keep wanting to call him Ishmael. But but she seems like she might not just be like completely for the Forsaken, or maybe she's just lying, or that's the way the actress is like pulling it off or something.
No,
But
I think you're right with
yeah,
that. She's kind of out for herself, really. And I won't say, what her motivations are, but she's not in lockstep with Ishamael. And I think they've made that pretty clear, I feel like. In
yeah,
the
yeah,
last episode, he was like, "Would you lie to me?" And she's like, "Yeah, obviously." Or "Would you betray me?" And she's like, "Yeah, of course." He laughs.
yeah. Because it does seem to be that she really just wants to have Rand back, and or the incarnation of him back, and she's willing to make bargains and deals with Rand.
Yes, her
um,
child bride.
to to a point. To a point, yes.
Yeah.
Child bride. Very interesting scene of him on the wheel, tied to the wheel on a cliff, kind of thing, kind of situation. They're like, the Rand actor, he did a lot of working out, and we're gonna show off his
Yeah.
nicely shaved chest for everybody, because we
Give the
can,
people what they want.
give the people what they want, you know.
I don't know. There
But
might be
that was a
more
bit
Lanfear fans than Rand fans. I think the Lanfear was what people were waiting for. There are people who are obsessed with her, like love her. They love her.
really,
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
huh?
There are big Lanfear fans out there.
Um, like from the book originally, or just like the
Yeah,
show in general? People are liking this character from the show. You're saying that in the book,
from the
people love
books.
Lanfear.
From the
Okay,
books.
okay.
I think a lot of it has to do with like the age of the reader. Like when you're a 15-year-old boy, maybe, and going through
Mm.
puberty, and you're like this hot, sexy sex lady, just she just is obsessed with this man, and it's awesome. Like she's the most beautiful. Every time she's described as like the most beautiful woman
Mm.
that's ever walked the earth. Everyone standing next to her looks like a cow. That's Lanfear. But it's the
Gotcha.
power too.
Yeah. So, have you do you know much about like the Dark Phoenix saga of X-Men?
Like
I know this is
little
this is a
tiny
weird
bit.
this is a weird tangent because like
Go for
there's
it.
been a bunch of movies about Dark Phoenix, but like they never really capture like what Dark Phoenix was about. And like so in the this is very like weird tangent that I hope will come back in and make sense. But so X-Men comics, when it first came out, there was a character called Marvel Girl who was
Mhm.
part of the team. And she was this like standard good girl, useless girl on the team. I mean, you know, she had telekinetic powers, but like she didn't use them to the degree of everybody else. So like all the other X-Men had like very obvious powers. Beast was strong, Iceman could make ice, Cyclops could shoot stuff, Angel could
Yeah.
fly. And then you had the girl, you know.
Hmm.
Um and for years she was just kind of that, this kind of like, you know, holdover 1950s-esque character, even though X-Men was in the 60s. So then they decided, then she like there's this whole thing where she goes into space and then all of a sudden she becomes like a femme fatale, super sexy.
Okay.
And it's a big deal because it's like it screws with all these little boys like heads,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
what happened to this like this innocent woman all of a sudden becoming this like, you know, weird lingerie wearing super sex machine. And then you find out that she's actually was, you know, an alien entity called the Phoenix Force, and who had cloned her body and all this confusing stuff. But there was
What a
definitely,
twist. What a
I
twist.
know, I know, but there was this definite, there's definitely like a weird, like, uh, like sex aspect to it that
Yeah.
paralleled the shifting of X-Men comics from something that was very clean to something that was a little more adult and complicated, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so people kind of remember this shocking story because of what it was, something they've never really captured and don't really understand it when they've tried to do it in these movies, because it takes like, you know, years and years
Build
of
up.
doing this. But
Yeah.
right, but it is this odd thing of portraying women as sexual beings to pubescent boys
Yeah.
or young
Yeah.
boys, who don't quite understand any of it, you know. And in many ways, you know, in many ways, anime is similar, um, because it's like all these like weird, sexy girls, and it's pushing a lot of sexual buttons in men that and they don't really know what they mean. You know, they
Yeah,
don't know
that's
what
true.
they don't know why they excite or titillate, you know, them, but they do. And they don't understand like all of the social implications of this and that
Yeah.
and stuff like that, because, you know, young boys are insecure and don't know anything. You know. But
Well, yeah, it's kind of like this beautiful, like the most beautiful who ever walked the earth has eyes for only this one kind of dopey farmer, you
mm,
know? And it's like, I could imagine people being like, I want that to be me. Like, I want to find someone who has eyes for me, that is that hot. But on the other hand too, like she does really embody this like 90s, I guess, like this idea of what like peak sexiness was in the 90s, like the slicked
mm.
back hair, the kind of smoky eye, wearing a men's shirt. And do you kind of know what I'm talking about? Think like Sharon Stone.
You're talking about like Trinity. Are you talking about like Trinity, or are you talking like Sharon
Yeah,
Stone?
like you go in between the two maybe,
Okay.
and that's what you've
Like
got.
not something as gender bending as Trinity, but like something more um like very in a sense very girly girl, but very strong at the same time.
Yes,
Like not, yeah,
powerful,
not
powerful.
trying, yeah.
Like the yeah, and I can see, like, even with the costuming and stuff that they've done in that one episode, the last episode, she's in the bedroom with the Shamael, and she's got the white collared shirt on with her makeup fully done, and they're kind of like spying on Rand. But it's almost like Robert Jordan took this peak idea of what like sexy 90s should be, went like all the way 100% with it, over the top. And then in this show, it's almost like they've kind of carried that over a little bit, like just from the era, I would say, like of the 90s.
Yeah,
But
there's a lot of weird. This is getting to some weird aspects of like of it now, because I'm thinking about like right now for Rand, who at this and I understand that like later on Rand loses perspectives and the story becomes less about him. But if we're still talking the first two or three books, Rand is still the main character, and so his love interests were Egwene, who
mhm.
is this like girl next door pure thing, right?
Yes, yes,
And then and this like very sexy adult, but also very so into him,
yeah,
um, woman. Yeah, they're both kind of they're both weird archetypes for like a young boy to think women would be like, like like you're not going to find that pure virgin girl next door character, and you're not going to find this like super sexy like girl who's like completely utterly into you and stuff like
yeah.
that. So
I I'm not trying to knock the character of Lanfear either, because I do think she has some really interesting aspects. Like, she's so power hungry, but
mm,
like her story before, like her prehistory before like the time that's taking place now, I think is really fascinating and really interesting. She was just a scientist, like trying to tinker around and figure out where power came from. And I
does
think that is
Rand even
interesting.
realize like how much power he has over her at this point? Because in the sense he's almost
In the show,
underplaying his hand. Yeah, in the show it seems like if it's true that she is so in love with him, he has a better hand than he thinks. He thinks like it seems like in the show he seems a little either on equal footing with her or feeling like he's subordinate to her.
right.
Um, when in fact, like because she's so in love with him, he could turn the tables on her if he wanted.
That's a good question, because I'm not really sure like what his, I don't know, like his naivete, like how how much does he really know at this point in the
Yeah.
show? He's only had what Moiraine, I guess, has told him, like, she's in love with
Right.
the Dragon Reborn. She might not hurt you.
And I mean, I granted I only read the first book, but show Rand is much more adult and less naive than Book Rand. You
Yeah.
know, Book Rand was just a child, and you feel like Rand in the show, especially just you get these little things about emotional intelligence and his able to
Yeah.
his ability to read people and stuff like this, and obviously his age just makes him feel more mature, and not that innocent boy. I mean, capable of have capable of having a normal adult sexual relationship with
Right.
Celine,
Yeah. Yeah.
which he doesn't have in the book apparently, right?
No. Mm-mm.
Weird, very
It's,
weird.
I think, I don't know. I don't know what that says about the author, but like, uh, I can't really go into this. It's like it's a
Yeah, I
spoiler,
understand.
but Rand's sex life is, it's a choice. In the books, I mean, in the
Yeah,
books.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say that Robert Jordan was writing at a time that he had predated the young adult fiction world, you know like Harry Potter and I'm trying to think of the others, the Hunger Games kind of stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
um that hadn't come out. And I remember being a teen Like I'm talking like 12, 13, 14. And there's this weird moment, at least when I grew up, there's this absence of books when you kind of leave the children's books. Like you leave Beverly Cleary and Judy Blume,
Yeah.
right? Who actually, if it weren't for Beverly Cleary and Judy Blume, there'd be no freaking books for third, fourth, fifth, sixth
Probably.
graders.
Yeah.
Period. Like thank goodness they existed,
Yeah.
because nobody, like no one else was reading books. But then there's this point where like, okay, once you're done with Henry Huggins and like Ramona Quimby and Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, your next choice is to like jump into actual books like Huck
Yeah.
Finn, and stuff like that, and or Great Expectations, which is, it's actually a bit of a jump. And I remember there being this moment where like one set of books was too easy and baby for me. This is like fifth, sixth, seventh grade.
Yeah.
One group of books was way too baby for me, but everything else is way too adult. And I remember that the only thing that was really at my reading level that was kind of available were the Dragonlance books, which
Okay.
I've talked to you about these before, like the
Yeah.
Dragonlance fantasy book. And so I was reading these Dragonlance books because there was just nothing else, and they were pretty adult. And I could imagine kind of the same thing, like 13-year-old, 14-year-old people in high school too. Like you can read like great literature, or there's like baby books. So it's almost like Wheel of Time was filling this void. Like,
Yeah,
what else can you
absolutely.
read?
Yeah. I think
Now
you're
there's
spot on. Spot on.
now there's a million books, right? But
Yeah.
like, but it's there was that moment where it's just like, what do I read? You know, and because man, like great literature, it doesn't connect in the same way. Obviously, like it's hard, it's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Not trying to read like Anna Karenina or something like that when I don't know. I've got like trusty fantasy. But
right.
I don't know. I think too though, when we're talking about like the time period that he wrote it, yeah, like a lot of the earlier books focus on Rand, but there's also like young men reading these books, and then there's a whole
Mm,
like gaggle of young women being like, "Oh, okay, like the Gandalf character is a woman. Like, cool.
mm,
I'm in. Let's do this." And I mean,
yeah. I'm sometimes I forget that how little chick lit there is in the world, and how I think sometimes they say like the definition of chick lit is so it's so open that you only need like a quarter of the book or something to be focused on women for it to be considered chick lit. Like like that's it's
like the
so
Bechtel
difficult to
test.
yeah, but they're it's like another type of Bechtel test they talk about like how much of the book like is actually from a female perspective, or how many of the characters are female. And if
Yeah.
even when you get to the situation where like if a literature has a quarter of the characters are female, it's like tipped over to the chicklet category, which is
Right.
really quite funny that like
Yeah.
wait,
Yeah.
you know, like like A Song of Ice and Fire is definitely in that category, despite the fact that like yeah, you've got Cersei and Brienne and Daenerys, but and Asha, but still the vast majority of the chapters of the characters are men, but still it feels like
Yeah.
it's catering to women.
Yeah.
And so I think the same thing was going on here, and you know, but I think some people realized like, oh gosh, like I can do Twilight and Hunger Games, and I can capture it all. Like, but
Right. Right. I mean, it's interesting how like how things have changed but haven't changed really. I mean, and I'm not
yeah, I
saying
mean
like,
now it's just like it's not yeah. There's so much more out there. There's so much more product, but
yeah.
for people to read. Back then, we were desperate. We were
Yeah.
desperate.
Yeah. I mean, the Wheel of Time came out before like I would have not been old enough to read it at the time that it came
Mm,
out. But looking back, reading it as an adult, looking at it, it does feel a little bit like, a little bit tropey here and there, but I can pick up on the things where I'm like, oh, okay, like I know why
mm,
people love this so much. Like I get it.
yeah.
and you have to go through like a massive series. But when you have time on your hands, why not? But I think too, like the journey of especially these younger characters like Egwene, Nynaeve, Elaine, they're in it from the beginning to the end, and then they have their whole like massive big character arcs, and you get to the point where towards the end of the book, like you have these really well fleshed out characters, and no matter who you are that's reading it, I think people have like picked their favorites. There's always someone that they can reach for and be like, oh, okay, like that's my anchor character, because there are so many, and whether it's male or female, there's so many to choose from. I mean, it's similar to A Song of Ice and Fire in that way. Like there's so many interesting characters.
And this isn't I hope this isn't too much of a spoiler, but I recently was reading something about Wheel of Time that said that the series wasn't really wrapped up very much, right? That like I understand there's a big epic ending, but like it's not like people compare it to like Lord of the Rings, where there's an appendix there that goes on, an epilogue that goes on describing exactly what happened to every single character and what happened to their descendants. Like there's,
Right.
That Robert Jordan had actually planned a bunch of spin-offs
Yeah.
to follow all the characters and keep writing forever, because this was his cash cow. And so I think he was like, I'm just going to develop this character here, and then if I want to do a spin-off series, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a lot of characters that end up being that probably ended up rather rich, because Robert Jordan thought he could continue on with them for a long time.
Probably. I know that New Spring is the only one of like the Outrigger novels that ever was made, but this is dealing with the past. So Moiraine and Swan Sanche's relationship while they were young girls, and them like going on the search for the Dragon Reborn, like her getting that first bit of information that like sends her off, looking for it. And I do really love that book. It's a lot smaller than the rest, a lot shorter, but I think it's a really good one. I do think though, with like some of the other characters, when he ended it, I'm like, is that like, oh, like what are we gonna do with this person? Like that's a mystery. Like what could they have done?
I mean, I know they say like for a fact he had like planned this Matt series, and that he never got around to. And I think Brandon Sanderson says that he's not going to write any more of these books, even though Robert Jordan had set up all of these spin-offs. And but well,
Brandon Sanderson's too busy. He's doing his own stuff.
I mean, he could do it on like a Saturday. He apparently has
right?
like, well, so it's not just that he has like a team of people that come behind him, so he can write Stream of Consciousness, and then they just fix up his stuff, and it's like ready to go.
Oh, does he?
So he's got a team. Brandon Sanderson is now a team, of people. So the person that's like the most crazy is always Stephen King, because he was always doing everything by himself.
I love interviews of like Stephen King. He's like, I don't even remember writing that book. Like that was in this era.
Yeah. But how would you? How would you remember when he's just? I mean, the guy. He says he writes 6,000 words a day.
It's wild.
He commits to like 4 hours and like 6,000 words a day. You're like, oh my god, what the hell?
Yeah.
How are you doing that? But whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. Were there any other parts of this episode though?
Let me think about. So I think they caught it. They probably could have done better, like explaining who the warder couple. I don't even know her name. I'm just gonna say the black couple.
Yeah.
They're married. I take it. I don't know. Maybe they're just a warder and an Aes Sedai. I don't know.
I don't know if they were married, but Yellow Aja, so a healer, Aes Sedai, and her warder.
Yeah, I guess it felt like, because when she gets captured and he dies, like I barely know who they are, so it's like I don't really feel very much. You get these little moments like, okay, we're Rosamund Pike's the star, so I guess we need to have some more bickering between her and her sister, her doing something, Like I almost feel like they give screen time to Rosamund Pike, even if they don't have too much for her to do. I thought Rand visiting the other channeler, the other male channeler, the false dragon,
Yeah.
that could have been again like an entire episode, because they just kind of goes, okay, you need to train me, and he's like, okay, and then immediately they're throwing magic around, and you're like, whoa, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, come on, slow roll this. Like, have him like sit down and try to do lessons or something. You can't just like be like, okay, train me, and then immediately magic is like flying around. So that felt a little weird.
Yeah, I thought that was a little bit too easy.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, too, like he wants to die, and Moiraine was like, "If you teach Rand, I'll, give you the knife so I'll assist your
Right.
suicide." But that, I don't know. I like those interactions between Rand and Logain, so I'm like, a little bit more of it would be okay with
Yeah.
me. But eight
But they could have at least
episodes, eight
cut. Like
episodes.
he could have arrived and said, okay, fine, I'll teach you. And then you make a cut, and then you come back in the episode, and some time has passed, and
Yeah.
now he does something. Like at least have a space there, so we think they've been doing some training.
Yeah. I like too how he was like, "Oh, you're so powerful. That's fine. That's enough. Like you don't need to you don't need to learn any like dexterity, but like just, atomic bomb. You're good. You're fine."
Good.
Oh,
What else? Oh,
Rand.
Lan. So Lan had to give up the idea that he found the dragon, and I guess I fully I don't really understand why he was keeping it from the other Aes Sedai, because once he revealed it, it seemed like, oh well, not that big a deal that these other warders and Aes Sedais know about it.
So this is okay. So I was talking about the prequel book about Moiraine and Swan Sanche. When they find out, and I don't know, it's not really, is it a spoiler if it happened in the past? I'm
No,
like,
I don't think so. I think
okay.
you can talk about the prequel book, right?
Okay. So they find out that like this child has been born, and they kind of have an idea of the age range and what they're supposed to look for, right? But at the same time that they're searching for this kid, this baby, men who can channel are being like killed left and right. And as it turns out, like the Dark One and his cronies have also figured out that the Dragon Reborn has been born. But Moiraine has a little bit of like a jump on the knowledge. Like she knows a little bit more. Anyone who knows about this secret gets killed, like could get killed. And it's one of the reasons in the book why like her and Swan Sanche kind of part ways, because they have to keep a distance from one another, their love, whatever. They make a split to protect one another and to pretty much go on their separate ways, doing what they can to find this kid. So it's in the same aspect of like Moiraine not telling her sister, because she's like, why didn't you come home? Well, she was out looking for this mythical like
Right.
prophet that anybody who knows about keeps getting like killed. And it's the same aspect with Lan and telling the other Aes Sedai. We know that there are dark friends in the tower now, so like them knowing about
Right.
this, not good.
I guess I mean, I understand all of that and it makes sense, but for us in the narrative of the story, it seems like
Exactly.
everybody freaking knows, right? Like it seems like Min knows, Matt knows, Moraine knows, Lan
Egwene,
knows,
Nynaeve, Lan,
Gwen, Nynaeve, like, and now
Aaron.
the false dragon. Like
Hmm.
it's just like the list is just long, and then the bad guys all seem to know. So like,
Yep. Cat's out of the
um,
bag.
right, cat's out of the bag. So it doesn't seem, and it seems like the cat's been out of the bag since the end of season one. Um, but because it seems like when he faces Ismail, like all the evil people should know. I mean, unless there's just not communication, but
They're not well, yeah, that's true.
and
That's
that's
true.
and
He's
that's
dark
that's when
friends.
Rand found out. So it seems like when Rand found out, everybody found out. So Land just seems like, I don't know, he's just hanging out with some people I don't care about. I don't know. So
I'm glad that they've come together in Cairhien. I'm ready for that chapter of Lan and Alana and the Warders. Like, I'm ready to put that aside for now and focus on like how they're going to get to the end of the season. We've got a wedding, we've got people and Falm. So between the next two episodes, like it's gonna be these two locations, and I think that's about it.
yeah, I'm just trying to think like all the things that need to be resolved. Like you feel like, all right, we need to have Egwene break out,
Mm-hmm.
or be rescued, and then we need to have
The horn.
the horn
We have
come
to
back
hunt.
in.
We have to hunt for
We,
that horn.
we got to hunt for that horn.
Yeah.
That they might have already hunted. Is the hunt done? But and that's I forgot Piran's like plot. He's just hanging out with some woman. Looking for her. I guess the giant dude needs to break out and rescued too.
Yeah. Loyal, the Ogier, and he's with the Shinaran guy, the Shinaran soldier. I did appreciate
Yeah,
Loyal's tree singing this episode.
yeah. Everybody was pretty into that tree, and then she was like, "Uh oh, people are into the tree. I guess I better have them stop singing."
Yeah.
So was he taking too? He was like taking too much attention in the party.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
She's
like you
petty
can't have
like that,
that.
I guess.
Mm-mm. But I suppose that is the broad question is besides having Egwene rescued, what do all of the characters want? I mean, I get that like Rand is the dragon and all, but unlike season one where there was a face off, I don't see where he's going. Like I don't see him like off to face off with somebody. And if it is like we need to get this MacGuffin, the horn, no one seems to be talking about the horn and how important it is. Except for the one thing, like Egwene is in trouble. I don't. What are all the characters doing? Like, what's Matt doing with himself?
Matt is the one that's like the biggest question for me. I mean, Elaine and Nynaeve, they're focused on rescuing Egwene. And now
Right.
Rand knows Egwene is being held captive. So
Needs to rescue her too. Oh, so like they all have purpose. Um,
Perrin is trying to go rescue the Ogier Loyal and the
okay,
Shinaran.
and they're in the same location,
They're
so
headed
all of
there.
them
Yeah.
should all run into each other.
Yep.
Trying to at this point. Okay, so I guess in that respect, the plot is rescue the people, rescue the ogre and
Hmm.
Egwene, and then that'll be the climax of the story and the resolution, I suppose. Getting the band back together. It almost
Yeah.
seems like.
The White Cloaks are headed to Falma or Falm also.
Huh.
The one White Cloak was like, yeah, these invaders from wherever will meet them in battle. So like I think we're gonna have more than just like Forsaken and our like
Mm.
heroes. Like we might have other groups joining in.
Yeah, now that I'm kind of seeing how the story is coming together, I do kind of think that had they had Egwene captured earlier, tortured longer, and more focus on like this is the goal. Ogre and Egwene are here.
Hmm.
The characters need to all head this way. That kind of building and march would be a little clearer. And then you'd feel like, oh, we're heading towards this conclusion. Because I will say that, like, you know the book and everything, and you know the events, but the characters do seem to be meandering quite a bit without purpose. To me, even though Piran is supposed to rescue this ogre, he hasn't talked about him too much. It doesn't seem like it's like an imperative thing. He's not like, I need to do this.
Yeah.
It's like he escapes, and then he's like, I'm gonna go back to this city because I don't want to follow you, wolf guy. And then I'm gonna let this woman out of a cage, and then I'm gonna talk to her by the fire and stuff like that. Like it didn't feel like he was on a mission. And Rand is just, I don't know what, he's just dealing with woman troubles.
Yeah.
And then Lan is wandering around
oh Lan.
doing whatever.
Oh Lan.
And Moiraine is just not eating sandwiches. It's just yelling at her sister. So yeah, had it, it's funny that I have to like sit down with you and talk about how like, oh right, all of those plots will all come together in one big like showdown in the end, in a big rescue. But man, it didn't seem like that. It didn't seem like we were marching this way.
I think that's the hardest thing about this season. 8 episodes to do like a whole book and parts of other books. That's a lot. And it's taking a lot of chopping up and kind of moving of pieces to make it work. And that's really hard to do in 8 episodes. Where if they tried to do like, okay, we're just going to take the high points of the book, like this big moment, this big moment, this big moment, then you wouldn't really have as much character development because you'd just be getting like the action, I guess. So I don't know. I do think they're doing a decent job though. And I am really enjoying the season much more than the first. I just do think that the 8 episodes, man, it is what it is.
I think it's a completely different experience probably having read the books, and like, because my wife was watching over my shoulder when I was watching the episode, and she's like, what's going on with that? What's going on with that? And I was like trying to explain it. And then I was like, and then she asked some question. I'm like, I'm not actually sure, like that kind of thing. And it's not like I haven't been watching, like, because, everybody likes to have a rich story. But it's like to go back and have that second story, like have the first simple story be understood and be comprehensible. And then have the extra stuff like Easter eggs or notice an extra plot in the background. It's very hard to weave something like that. That takes a lot of effort and work. But nonetheless, I thought it was a good episode, and
so did
this is my favorite one so far.
All right.
Thank you for having this podcast, and I'll
thanks for joining me, and we'll next episode see how it goes.